Hey, before we start this episode of Pumpkin Spice Podcast, I'm just breaking in real quick. I'm Rob Schulte, and I'm with my friend...
Brittany, hi.
Brittany has been joining me last week. You probably heard her on that episode, but she's also been on the more recent bonus episodes. It's been pretty cool. Brittany, have you enjoyed being part of the Pumpkin Spice team?
You know I have.
Of course. Listen to that energy. We just watched and recorded an episode on 1988's The Nest, one of the grossest and not scary horror films I've seen, and that was a damn good time.
It was what they sometimes would call a doozy.
But even more exciting, Brittany, is what we have coming up this November. Would you like to elaborate on that?
I would love to. We have a great new show coming out. It's called The TV Show. And we talk about TV shows from yesteryear. That's a time period.
Yeah, it's like a gray cloud of whenever the hell we decide to pull a TV show out.
Yeah, because we're the boss. We get to decide.
Haven't watched a Who's the Boss episode yet, though.
Well, that should go on the list. We scrub through scene by scene. It's a little bit intense, but I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. And if you don't, to be honest, just don't tell me, okay?
Yeah, because we're
sensitive.
And sometimes we just have to watch a lot of Dawson's Creek.
That's so true. We always go back to the creek.
So what's going to be cool about this is after each episode of this autumn season of Pumpkin Spice Podcast, we're going to put a couple of minutes of a TV show episode at the end. So a little bit of a sneak preview of that.
Sneak peek, if you will.
Okay, cool. So I guess we can let people get into the actual episode now.
Yeah. Yeah, we should probably let them do that.
Welcome to Pumpkin Spice Podcast. It's a seasonal, artisanal treat. It's that time of year again, Graham, and here we are at season 3.
It is September, and we are back at Pumpkin Spice Podcast talking about a certain 80s franchise that many of you may be familiar with. Rob, what is that franchise that we're talking about this season?
We are going to attempt to watch all of the Child's Play series.
That's right. We've chosen the Child's Play series. Rob, we thought it would be interesting to talk about a film that has lasted from 1988 to 2017, which is, I know Hellraiser and I believe the Puppet Master films have gone on.
Sure.
But
I'm sure they have.
I think Child's Play is arguably the better franchise, but that's up for debate for sure.
I'm sure they all have their peaks and their troughs.
Yes.
What have you been up to since last season? Any big new life changes?
Not really. Still living in Austin. I'm doing a game show that's coming out soon, and I'll be directing my first short film in Texas. I did a couple in Kansas, but this is my first one in Texas, so I'm pretty excited about that. And Rob,
not much is going on.
Yeah,
hosting a game show and directing a film.
And doing this wonderful show with you, Rob. And Rob, I got to ask, how is life in the Big Apple?
It's great. I got a new job and...
You're an adult.
I guess. And at the time of us recording this, I am still just adjusting.
Bright lights, big city.
Well, yeah, and also I wanted to say it was great. Thank you so much for showing me around the city last summer. We had a great time, and I hope you had a great time
so much
in
fun.
Austin, Texas, when we talked about those wonderful films from Austin.
Going down to Texas.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun. That was a fun little summer road trip.
Absolutely. But that's now over, and now it's a little chilly outside. It's not that chilly here in Austin, but you know what I'm talking about.
Getting there.
It's getting there.
Graham, before we go too deep into weather talk, what do you say we jump into this episode? 1988's Child's Play.
It all started with this big shootout, you see? I was just your average everyday creep on the run until a little evil magic changed me into what I am today. Chucky.
The film had actually 3 titles. The third one was Child's Play. The first one they wanted to go with was Batteries Not Included. And Spielberg sort of bought the rights to that before the producers of Child's Play had a chance. So their second option was Blood Buddy, which was a play on the My Buddy doll, which is sort of what Chucky's based on. And do you remember the My Buddy doll from the 80s? My buddy and me.
Graham, you are literally getting that stuck in tens of people's heads right now.
Yeah, I know. So that's how I'll just torture the audience for the day. But no, so that My Buddy was the inspiration, and then the studio wanted a stronger title, so they went with Child's Play, which is what we ended up with. But Rob, I think like everyone you talk to refers to this as the Chucky series.
Well, yeah, because they split the names like halfway through.
It was Child's Play 1 through 3, and then the rest were sort of Chucky in the title instead of Child's Play.
And the rest.
Yes.
Graham, we're a unique podcast in that one of the things that we came to terms with is that, you know what we need? We need more segments in the show. We were meandering, and I think one of those first segments is a film overview.
Yes.
So what I did is I went to the Internet Movie Database. When Charles Lee Ray needs to get quick escape from cop Mike Norris, he takes his soul and buries it into playful, seemingly good guy doll Chucky. Little does he know, a little boy by the name of Andy Barclay will be the new owner of him soon to come. Charles confides in Andy while he commits numerous murders. Once the adults accept Andy's story as truth, it's too late. This is written by Chris Hobson. Chris also left their email address.
Which I don't know if we should give out. If we should give out, but
it's on IMDb if someone really wants Chris's email address.
And that's Chris with a K, which I think is kind of cool. And
very cool.
That's
very cool.
Poetry, Rob. That was beautiful.
So thank you, Chris, for that. Next segment, Time Capsule. The Friday before this movie came out, because this was a Wednesday release, was They Live, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And the next week after Child's Play, Ernest Saves Christmas came out. So, an interesting time for film.
A wonderful time for film. 1988 was a magical year.
I just had a bit of the alone at night willies, you know? Now, would you stop worrying and give Criswell a kick in the pants for me, huh?
You got it.
I know that there were some protests by MGM, and this is the only Child's Play movie that's produced by MGM. The rest were released by Universal, I believe. Look, like we've kind of discussed before in previous episodes, sometimes like Paramount with Jason, MGM was like making a lot of money off Child's Play, but it was like a huge embarrassment. Again, there were a lot of protests because people thought that it was making young children violent, and there were actually two sort of infamous murders in the United Kingdom that the killers sort of referenced Child's Play. And I don't want to get too much into that. You can look up those stories if you'd like, because I don't think there's any sort of correlation between movie violence and real life violence. And again, if you want to look that up, you can.
But it can affect the society, whether it's like influences it, you know.
What's that popular line in Scream?
Don't you blame the movies? Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
And it says that they were going to be insane anyway and kill people. They just watched a movie and they ripped off the movie or something like that. But I have no authority to talk on this issue whatsoever. I'm by no means an expert, so please do not listen to me. In fact, that's a disclaimer for every episode. Probably don't do as I do.
You know what? I will also jump on that and retroactively to every episode prior to this one.
Yes, I was mentally insane during seasons 1 and 2, and so I cannot be sued in a court of law.
Same.
Yeah.
I might even still be insane. So,
in rewatching the film, I have to say that I really enjoyed myself for the most part. There was one thing that really bothered me, and I'll just go ahead with the negative of the film for me.
Graham's gavel's coming down.
It's my gavel of judgment right here.
And this is in our new segment, What Stuck Out?
The voodoo.
Oh, yeah.
That
Same.
is so fucking stupid. And for those who don't know what I'm talking
Graham,
about.
you went with stupid on that.
Oh, yes. I thought, I think that was, I'm going to put that on studio interference because I know that was not a decision from Tom Holland. I don't know that for a fact, but I just know it. I mean, he's a smarter filmmaker than that. And you sort of...
Are you sure?
Well, we'll get into his later filmography a little bit later. It's not... Well, yeah, well, let's not digress into that. But I think that... He is a good filmmaker, and I think Child's Play and Fright Night prove that. Like, you had to Groundhog Day this motherfucker in a sense that you just don't explain it, and the world that you create will support it. And if it's interesting, the audience will sort of gravitate towards what you're putting on screen and not questioning it. Groundhog Day, we have no idea why this is happening to Bill Murray. It's just happening, and we accept that. And I wish that Child's Play would have done a similar thing in the sense just to trust the audience. We'll go with it if you're inventive with the world creation.
I don't believe it.
Like, cut the whole scene with that dude's apartment, right?
The voodoo guy?
Yeah. Like, if you just see Charles Lee Ray, like, chanting something creepy and then lightning comes down and then the doll's alive... Seems like enough for me.
Exactly, Rob. And
also, in that scene in the guy's apartment when Chucky brings the voodoo doll out, doesn't the guy say something along the lines of like,
shouldn't tell your customers where you hide things like this, John.
Yeah.
Like, why would you show anyone where the voodoo doll of yourself is?
And also, I want to point out, Rob,
why have one made?
That voodoo is like typically always used for evil. Okay? And he's like, I shouldn't have taught you the ways of voodoo. You're a bad guy. And he's like, yeah, duh, he's a serial killer. And again,
just hanging out with this dude.
Like, people that use black magic, they ain't feeding the homeless with that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and also it's like, first of all, I recognize that my education on the subject of voodoo in any way is non-existent. So whatever this movie's interpretation of this is ridiculous, because in what world would a serial killer also be hanging out with some sort of like
the neighborhood voodoo guy?
Yeah, it's like, at what point was also the voodoo guy not just like, maybe I'll take a chance on this guy.
It's so dumb. And here's the thing, Rob. I also want to point out that if this movie took place in New Orleans, totally, that would work. I would totally believe it. But the fact that it takes place in Chicago, and it's such a Chicago film, and we'll get into that a little bit later, voodoo doesn't represent Chicago to me. Like New Orleans, maybe, but Chicago, like, get the fuck out of here. It doesn't make any sense at all.
You're an abomination, an outrage against nature. You perverted everything I've taught you and used it for evil.
What does Merriam-Webster define voodoo as? Because this movie has to have gotten it wrong.
It's a religion that is derived from the African polytheism and ancestor worship and is practiced chiefly in Haiti. A person who practices voodoo is a person who deals in spells and necromancy.
Necromancy, the supposed practice of communicating with the dead, especially in order to predict the future.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but that was really my only real strong criticism, because for the most part, I think this is a pretty decent film and it actually holds up. And there's a scene in particular, it's actually my favorite scene. If you let me digress, I'll tell you about it.
Okay, go for it.
The mom drops the little boy Andy off to school, and he leaves the school and boards the Chicago L train with Chucky in hand, and goes to the worst a really bad area in Chicago. And for some reason, Rob, I don't mean to get all artsy-fartsy here, but it really reminded me of the Italian neorealism and like the works of...
oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like watching like De Sica or Rossellini, where you're seeing like this little boy with this doll, and he's walking through the ruins of this city, and
it's kind of like The Red Balloon.
Yeah, there you go. I'll accept that. I'm
pretty sure. I think most of the Child's Play series is like that.
Yeah, Tom Holland was hugely influenced by Roberto Rossellini and Vittorio De Sica. But no, it's just this beautiful scene. Honestly, it's a beautiful scene, and he's in the train and he's kind of talking to the doll, and it's really charming. And I think that may be the best sequence that Tom has ever directed. Although, again, I still think his best film is Fright Night. I thought that scene was really touching, and I think that any parent can sort of only imagine what it would be like to drop your kid off at school, and then he sort of walks right back out of school and goes to a place where he or she shouldn't go. And I thought that when those elements are at play in the film, it's where it works best.
And this is the scene where Chucky's leading Andy so that Chucky can kill his old partner in that like slum house.
Yeah, Caputo.
Caputo goes kapow.
Yeah. And at that point, Rob, like, I really wish the film would have just been Chucky and Andy wandering the streets of Chicago.
That'd be like a Smokey and the Bandit type of movie.
Well, just
right?
kind of, yeah. And just, again, sort of
the next one, Andy's got this big, like, push broom mustache and cowboy hat, and Chucky's, like, driving a semi. Soundtrack is all banjo music.
It's a wonderful little part in the movie. I thought it was really touching. Also, Rob, do you remember the scene in Chucky where the boy...
In Chucky or Child's Play?
Oh, Child's Play. There I go again. Child's Play, where the little boy's in the institution. Andy, he's in the institution, and he is looking out the door that's locked in his cell, and he's saying, "Oh my God, Chucky's coming. Chucky's coming. Chucky's going to kill me. Chucky's going to murder me." And he starts crying and freaking out. And at that point, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is like totally real. And also, like, Tom Holland, do you feel any remorse for putting that kid through hell and getting to react that way? Because for me, I was just like, I totally bought it. I thought I totally believed Andy's performance. I was just like, whoa, like, this movie just got real.
Well, that kid like stumbles over half of his lines, so I'm not... Maybe he just believed the entire movie.
I know that the actor who plays Andy, his name is Alex Vincent. He was in the two most recent Chucky films. So we'll talk about him a little bit later on, but he's been involved with the series throughout. In fact, he was in parts 1 through 3, and I believe the last 2.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And well, we'll get to that down the line. Graham, I think it's time we got to move to our next segment.
But real quickly, before we do, Rob, I just want to mention Chris Sarandon really quickly, the Chicago police detective. Probably most people will recognize him from The Princess Bride as Prince Humperdinck.
Okay, well, deviating from the segment for a moment, I got a question for you. Does it take it away that you see Charles Lee Ray before he becomes Chucky? Like, should that be at the beginning? And also, the guy who plays Charles Lee Ray, Brad Dourif, didn't really, like, stand out to me.
I see what you're saying there. I thought he looked kind of cool in this movie. He has, like, really long hair.
I know that you are partial to long hair.
And also, to answer your first question, as far as, like, what do you think about seeing him, especially at the beginning of the movie, I thought that the movie started with that was a good opening scene, the shootout. I mean, it puts you right in the film.
You hear this, you son of a
because he has long hair, he kind of looks like Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings, which is probably the film that most people have seen Brad Dourif in.
Brad Dourif super looked like a weird homeless guy, but not a serial killer. He didn't look like creepy serial killer.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it is, like, because I'm so used to like the Harry Connick Jr.'s
from Copycat.
Type serial. Yeah.
Oh my God. I pulled that one right out of my ass, and yes, I have seen Copycat with Sigourney Weaver, and you just said his name, Rob, in my mind.
Harry Connick Jr.
There you go. Thank you very much.
You blooded up my knife, you dog. I hate cops.
Brad Dourif has kind of popped up here and there. Again, most people probably know him from Lord of the Rings. He was.
But ultimately, do you think that scene should have been there, or would it have more effect later in the film?
Are you talking about as a flashback?
Yeah, like, is it needed at the beginning? Does it take away from the Chucky parts?
Here's the thing. I will say this. I am happy that I get to see the human form of Chucky, per se. I'm doing quotation marks with my fingers right now.
And your toes.
And my toes, exactly.
Graham podcasts from a sex swing.
Yeah. You don't even want to know the places I broadcast from Austin. You don't even want to know.
Next week, tune in and find out.
Yes, exactly. You'll hear more of that disgusting filth. But yes, I am happy that I was able to see him in human form. I think that's the big kind of takeaway. Now, maybe you're right, Rob. It would have been interesting to see that revealed later on in the film, much like Freddy Krueger.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of, honestly, her sort of finding out right after the I think pretty iconic scene with the batteries. She discovers that there's no batteries in Chucky and that he's acting on his own will. And she's like, you tell me something or I'm going to throw you in the fireplace. And it's a great little scene.
Then if he told that scene from like the jail of the fireplace, you know, because then you could get like your standard jail tropes where they like pan across the face and there'd be the, you know, makeshift jail. I don't know. It could be fun.
Yeah. Look, I want to be real. Child's Play 1 isn't a perfect film, but it is a smart, intelligent film. I think Tom Holland is a very creative director, and the film works, but there are some flaws. And again, the biggest one for me was the voodoo bullshit. It is just dumb.
Oh, totally. Let's move on to one of our last segments. We are segment rich on this show now. The X Factor. And I found something interesting about this film by using the internet. And I don't know if you have a little X Factor that you want to add to this episode, but Charles Lee Ray and Chucky, voice of Chucky, almost went to John Lithgow.
I couldn't care less about your life. Or death.
And John Lithgow lost to Brad Dourif.
It's hard imagining like John Lithgow losing to anybody. Like he's
which must be that must be tainting why I thought Brad Dourif was generic. So I read that fact. You know, I must have just.
So you would have. I mean, because everyone can buy John Lithgow as a serial killer, especially if you've seen Blowout by Brian De Palma, and if you haven't, go watch it immediately.
And if you've seen the 4th season of Dexter, where he plays a serial killer,
which I haven't, but. Rob, I may just watch the 4th season, just that season because of
yeah, that's pretty much what I tell everyone to do.
We're big fans of John Lithgow on the Pumpkin Spice podcast. And John, if you're listening, we would love to talk to you.
Please, come on. I live in New York. You're here all the time. I'm pretty sure you live here.
And I live in Austin, Texas. And John, I know you're never here, but call me.
Yeah, it's been the John Lithgow moment of this episode. Will that be a recurring segment? Tune in next week. Graham, we are eking our way towards the end of this first episode of season 3, and I am really enjoying it.
I am too, and I've had a blast doing this episode. I would like to add a small X factor, if I may.
Ooh, please do. I was jumping to move to this next segment, but I didn't even give you a chance to insert your X Factor.
Well, your X Factor included John Lithgow, and that's why I said my small addition, because when you throw out the John Lithgow card,
it's on the table.
No one's going to top it. He's the best. But here's the thing, okay? And I'll be frank here. I think the X Factor in this movie is the creature or character design of Chucky. And I was in a video store. I still go to video stores.
Were you returning some videotapes?
Yeah, I had to return some videotapes.
I've got to return some videotapes.
And I'm walking in the video store.
Are you going to meet at Dorsia later?
Yes.
As well?
Yes, and my Brooks Brothers suit should be dry cleaned by then. So.
And check out this watermark. Double embossed.
We're referencing Less Than Zero. Yeah, less than zero.
Less than zero?
We're referencing Less Than Zero there. But here, the thing about it is, I was walking in this video store, and I saw the cover to a film called Annabelle. And I guess it's a prequel to the Conjuring series, which I haven't seen because the modern state of horror films just depresses me. And I'm looking at the cover, and it's a doll. And it's a doll that's really creepy looking, and no parent would buy that doll for their kid. It's like you would buy that, and the kid would like start crying, and you would throw it in the trash, you know? And so I have to say, with Child's Play, the design really works for me because it's kind of smiling, and it's got these like really sort of inviting pale blue eyes. But as soon as the eyebrows start to furrow and the mouth sort of turns into a devilish grin, that charming toy doll becomes something else. And I think that the creators of the doll did a very good job in the sense that this is a doll that it's believable that a parent would buy that for their kid, and then it's very menacing looking when it needs to be. Unlike that Annabelle doll, I just started laughing when I walked past it. I was just like, who the fuck would buy a doll like that for their kids? Like a psycho.
Yeah, that's not smart parenting. And I think the one takeaway I would like our audience to have from this show is that we encourage smart parenting. You plant a seed for the shade of the future from a tree. You don't chop the tree down. Well, I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
What you're trying to say, Rob, is that you watch these movies with your kids early on, okay? Look, think about it is, you don't want your kid off with some, bad kid watching Freddy Krueger. When your kid's already watched it with you,
he'll be the bad kid.
Exactly. And we want our kids to be the bad kids because the bad kids are always
the good kind of bad kids, though.
Yeah.
Not the bad kind of bad
Not
kids.
the bad. I mean, they might wear a leather jacket, but
they won't smoke.
They will smoke.
In college.
But they will also break up fights that they feel that are unfair. And they will
you guys can talk this out.
They may give a sass to the principal. But at the end of the day...
Only when it's justified, though.
Only when it's justified. And when at the end of the day, he might say, you know what, principal? You're right.
Or like, you got a hard job, and I understand that.
Yeah. Like, I get what it's like to be... He's a human being, is what I'm trying to say. I don't even know who we're talking about. I'm talking about these kids.
Anyway. Okay, so Graham, I do need to... something that I wanted to tell you earlier... Before we go into our final segment, when I read the film overview by Chris Hobson earlier in the episode,
yes,
I clicked on their name just to see some other movies that Chris had written reviews of. Chris has only written reviews of 3 things on Amazon, and Child's Play is one of them, and it's the top one that popped up on my page. You want to hear what else Chris reviewed?
I'm curious, yeah.
Grease from 1978.
Uh-huh.
And an episode of The O.C., The Chrismukkah That Almost Wasn't.
Wow, Chris has got some interesting taste.
Moving on to our final segment of the show. Bam, drum roll. One IMDb review pops up whenever I look at the page of Child's Play. And Graham, I don't know how it works, much like before. Maybe it's the most voted, maybe it's the something, but it's the one that's in my feed. And if you don't mind, I would like to introduce this as a segment that we read at the end of each episode.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Subject: holy crap. And there's a lot of like all capital letter words in this review that I will read at like a louder tone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Please do. Please do.
So, subject: holy crap. I really don't care what anyone says about this movie. I am a horror movie fanatic, and I first saw this film at the age of 7. Out of all my horror movies I've ever seen, Child's Play, the first one, to me, is the scariest movie I've seen. A creepy looking doll, a creepy voice, eerie music, because it's not even music. It's like chimes and a combination of creepy sounds, suspense, and of course, barely any comedy, just pure horror. Out of all the horror movies I've seen, the scariest movies would have to be the following: Child's Play, Pet Sematary, The Exorcist 3, Evil Dead is pretty creepy at times, The Others, Saw, not quite as scary, just a damn good movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, original, April Fool's Day is kinda creepy, Sleepaway Camp, music, and that ending. There are a few more, but I can't quite think. However, the tops are Child's Play and Pet Sematary. Oh, and High Tension is a very good horror/suspense. So if you want to be creeped out, go home, turn off the light, put on the TV, on loud or surround sound if you have it, and watch by yourself. It's a scary movie. Well, at least to me it is. I'm not scared of the movie now at the age of 25, but it is one of the only ones that no matter how many times I watch it, still creeps me out a bit.
Wow.
That's a pretty good review.
It is a very good review.
And that review was by CC the Movie Man -1.
Oh, wow. I do applaud him for putting original in parentheses after Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All of us here in Austin will tip our hat to you, sir.
I just like the enthusiasm of it. And I think it's a really good spot to leave us to start thinking about the next one. It's a high note. But Graham, will I see you again next week for Child's Play Part 2?
Part 2.
I guess not Part 2, it's just Child's Play 2.
Part 2.
Cool. Well, Graham, I have one last final thing that I think will help our listeners. So we have a Facebook discussion group, talk about the movies that we have, Pumpkin Spice Podcast. It's all there on Facebook, if that's your thing. If not, just use the hashtag Pumpkin Spice Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, whatever you like to do there. Graham, see you next week.
Until next week, Rob.
Listen up, fool, I'll tell you why. 'Cause Chucky's bad, that ain't no lie. C-H-U-C-K, why don't you come out and play? Over in the corner now, peekaboo. Honey, honey, ha-ha, I see you.
Hey everyone, Rob here. Remember, if you like what we're doing and you want to show us some support, as little as $1 a month really helps out over at our Patreon page. Now, check out this special sneak preview of the TV show.
And I think the only other thing to note here is that the mom calls the dad Mr. Man-Meat. And I was
God.
I was like, end scene.
Okay, Mr. Man-Meat, I'll see you later. Mom.
We see that Joey travels exclusively by boat. Arrives at some house where a man with a pot gives her some stew to try. She describes it as orgasmic. And then another woman comes out who also describes the stew as orgasmic. And we are left to wonder who the fuck these people are.
Yeah, well, and I'm like, I wonder who these people are, and can I get the recipe?
You throw a bone in there, you got a stew going.
Cool. You can give me the recipe after the show, I guess.
One thing we should note about the couple that Joey runs into, that we eventually learn is Joey's sister and her boyfriend. Joey's sister's pregnant. So they're in a relationship.
I'm gonna knock her silly, I swear it.
Here, try this.
Orgasmic.
Dawson and Pacey, they're at their after-school job at the video store.
A typical, of course.
Typical time capsule moment for us now, renting VHS tapes. Funny thing, there's a poster of I Know What You Did Last Summer